Greetings, seeker of wisdom. Welcome to the only space where silence speaks louder than noise, where presence is more than showing up. It's a force that lingers even when you've left the room. Today, I'm going to share something the Stoics never said directly, but lived so powerfully, it became a secret only the wise can see. How to be appreciated, even in your absence. If you're tired of forcing attention, begging to be valued, or proving your worth every time you enter a room, then maybe the Stoics have something to whisper to your soul. Before we dive deep into this ancient secret, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because you're not just someone watching, you're someone ready to live above the noise, above the crowd, above the need to be seen or just to matter. Now let's peel back the curtain. Let's start with something simple but unsettling. Have you ever met someone whose absence feels louder than most people's presence? A person who, even when they're not in the room, you find yourself thinking, what would they say? What would they do? That's not charisma. That's not ego. That's something deeper, something rooted in virtue, not vanity. The Stoics didn't chase popularity. They didn't crave applause. They built themselves like temples, quiet, solid, unshakable. So even when the world turned away, their influence remained like the scent of burning incense long after the flame is out. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, knew that his reputation wasn't built on speeches or appearances, but on how he treated others when no one was watching. His meditations weren't public posts. They were private reflections, and yet, centuries later, they still echo in rooms he never entered. That's the secret. You become appreciated in absence by mastering how you are in presence. Not flashy, not loud, but rooted, intentional, clear. You're not remembered for the noise you make, but the weight you carry in silence. And silence, as Epictetus said, is often the sign of strength, not weakness. Think about that. In a world where people fight to be seen, the Stoic chooses to stand still and somehow becomes the one remembered. But how do you build that kind of presence? How do you become someone who matters, even when you're not there to remind them? It starts not with what you say, but what you consistently live. Let me tell you a quick story. There's a tale about a wise man in a small village who never spoke much, but when he did, everyone listened. One day, a traveler asked a local, "Why do you respect that man so much? He barely speaks." The local replied, "Because he doesn't waste words, and because when he's gone, everything feels a little less certain." That's impact. That's legacy. And that's something you can start building right now. But not by talking more, posting more, or pushing more. It begins with something far more powerful. It begins with consistency. That invisible thread that binds your actions to your values, even when no one's applauding. You see, the Stoic doesn't perform. He doesn't wear masks to please the crowd or bend to fit the expectations of the moment. And because of that, when he is gone, people feel the absence of someone real, not entertaining, not impressive, but authentic. In a world addicted to attention, true value feels like rebellion. Seneca once wrote, "A great man is one who can be himself in every situation." Why does that matter? Because when you're the same person in private as you are in public, people trust you. And when people trust you, your presence stops being about proximity. It becomes something else entirely. A feeling, a memory, a kind of invisible guidance that remains even when your voice is no longer in the room. You become the inner compass for others, not because you told them what to do, but because you showed them how to live. And that's rare. That's magnetic. Let's be honest. Most people are exhausting. They shift with every opinion, perform for every crowd, and leave behind nothing but a blur of noise. But the Stoic, he's simple, not shallow, simple. Like a well-carved statue, his form is stable, intentional, silent, but impossible to ignore. This doesn't mean being passive. It means being so clear in who you are that you no longer need to defend it. And that kind of clarity creates space, the kind that others want to enter, even when you're no longer there. Have you ever noticed how the people who listen the most speak with the greatest power? It's because they're not just hearing, they're absorbing, they're watching, they're learning. So when they do speak, it's worth everything. That's what makes your absence meaningful. When people realize how much clarity, honesty, and calm you brought into the room without ever demanding it. There's an almost sacred quality in restraint, and yet it's wildly underrated. You don't need to post every thought. You don't need to correct every fool. You don't need to chase praise. Because when you live your principles, truly, others will carry your presence with them long after your body has left the scene. And that's power. That's appreciation. Not the kind you beg for, but the kind you earn with every unseen act of integrity. But here's where it gets uncomfortable and beautiful. To be appreciated in your absence, you have to surrender the need to be appreciated at all. That's the paradox. That's the Stoic twist. You don't gain influence by chasing it. You gain it by forgetting yourself in service of something bigger. Virtue, excellence, reason, justice. The moment you stop asking, "How do they see me?" and start asking, "Am I living well?" something strange happens. People begin to see you in a way you never imagined. Not as someone who needs praise, but as someone who doesn't. And that, my friend, is rare and irresistible. Let's take a modern example. Think of someone like Mr. Rogers, soft-spoken, gentle, consistent. He never needed to shout to be heard. He just was. And that being was so honest, so reliable, that to this day, his absence still teaches us something. He didn't dominate rooms. He didn't chase trends. He just lived with quiet conviction. And the world noticed, long after he was gone. So ask yourself, are you living like that? Are you building a presence so aligned with your values that when you're gone, from the room, the conversation, the job, even this world, people carry a piece of you with them? That's not ego. That's the legacy. And the Stoics weren't trying to be remembered. They were trying to live rightly. The memory was just a side effect. See, appreciation isn't something you demand. It's the echo of your character in the minds of others. And that echo, it doesn't come from a single loud act. It comes from thousands of quiet ones. When you help someone without announcing it, when you speak the truth without needing applause, when you leave a conversation without proving you're right, you leave a mark, a Stoic mark. Invisible maybe, but indelible. And that kind of presence, that kind of essence, it's more powerful than any status update, any speech, any spotlight. It's the presence that doesn't vanish when the door closes. It lingers, like a guiding star in someone else's night sky. And here's something most people miss. Presence is not built in public. It's built in the quiet hours, in solitude, in discipline, when no one is watching, when there's no reward. The Stoic doesn't train for the applause. He trains for the storm. He sharpens his character like a sword, not to display it, but to be ready when it's needed. And in doing so, his very life becomes a form of preparation. Quiet, invisible, but deeply felt. Think of a lighthouse. It doesn't move. It doesn't chase ships. It doesn't call out, "Look at me." It simply stands, lights its flame, and lets others navigate by its consistency. That's what you become when you live like a Stoic. Someone who doesn't demand attention, but guides through presence. There's an old fable about a tree that stood at the edge of a village. It wasn't the tallest. It didn't bloom the brightest, but it was strong, always there. People passed it every day, hardly noticing, until the storm came. When the winds roared and the rains flooded the earth, people ran beneath that tree for shelter. It bent but didn't break. It protected without asking to be thanked. And when the skies cleared, they realized that tree had always been there, and they'd never really seen it. After that day, they looked at it differently, not because the tree changed, but because they did. That's the kind of appreciation the Stoic earns, the kind that doesn't come from putting on a show, but from showing up the same way, day after day, until people can't imagine stability without you. And when you're gone, they'll feel it, not because you tried to be unforgettable, but because you were reliable, strong, rooted. That is the Stoic secret. Appreciation that's not loud, but lasting. But don't mistake this for martyrdom. The Stoic isn't trying to disappear. He's trying to matter in the most grounded way possible. You see, when your value is internal, when your compass points inward, instead of spinning with every opinion, you stop chasing people, and people start noticing your stillness. It's magnetic because it's rare. People are drawn to those who don't need them, not in a cold, dismissive way, but in a complete, fulfilled way. You become whole in yourself, and when others feel that wholeness, they start to trust you. They lean on you, and even when you're gone, they return in memory to the steadiness you offered. There's a quiet seduction in self-control. Imagine walking into a room where everyone's trying to be the loudest, the funniest, the most impressive. And then there's one person, calm, attentive, unimpressed by the noise. That person doesn't need to talk much. Their presence speaks. That's what you become when you train yourself not to need the room. That's what makes you remembered. Now here's the challenge, and this is where most fail. Can you stay consistent when nobody praises you for it? Can you show up with integrity when no one claps? Because appreciation earned in absence is forged in moments like that. When you choose kindness over cleverness, when you stay silent instead of retaliating, when you walk away instead of needing to be right. These are the moments that leave a mark deeper than any compliment could. They get stored in the minds of others, not as "that person said something cool," but as "that person made me feel grounded, safe, better." The Stoics understood, you don't chase legacy. You live virtue, and legacy finds you. And that's exactly why the Stoic is appreciated, even when he is not there. Because his presence was never built to impress. It was built to endure. And here's where the real magic happens. When you stop seeking recognition, you make space for respect to grow naturally, silently, like roots beneath the surface. Respect isn't loud. It doesn't need validation. It accumulates slowly, through 1,000 unnoticed moments of alignment between what you say and what you do. That's why the Stoic, even in its absence, becomes a quiet authority in the hearts of others. not because he demanded loyalty, but because he embodied trust. This is the man who kept his word when it cost him something, the woman who remained calm when others were drowning in panic, the friend who didn't flatter you but told you the truth when it was hard. And when that kind of person leaves, there's a void, not because they made you dependent, but because they made you better. It's ironic. The Stoic doesn't want to be admired, and yet he is, precisely because he holds himself to a higher standard than the world expects. And the world, whether it admits it or not, it feels that deeply. You don't need to remind people of your value if you've lived in a way they can't forget. The philosopher King Marcus Aurelius once asked himself each morning, "What will I meet today? The arrogant, the deceitful, the envious, the selfish." And yet he never allowed their behavior to corrupt his own. He didn't act according to the crowd. He acted according to the logos, the higher order of reason, truth, and virtue. That's why he's still quoted, still studied, still felt, centuries later. And here you are, right now, listening to this, not because Marcus tried to go viral, but because he lived in a way that couldn't be ignored. That's the model. Live with such clarity, such discipline, such honest calm, that when your name comes up in conversation, people pause, not because you were loud, but because you were true. And truth has a weight that echoes louder than noise. So here's the truth, as raw and unshakable as a mountain. You want to be appreciated when you're not around? Then live in a way that can't be erased when you walk out the door. That doesn't come from charm. It doesn't come from talent. It comes from character. Every time you act with integrity when no one's watching, every time you choose self-restraint over self-promotion, every time you bring clarity into chaos, calm into conflict, you become unforgettable, not by force, but by essence. The Stoics knew this, that the highest form of influence is not to command people, but to inspire them in your absence. To leave behind not your opinion, not your image, but your example. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you powerful in silence. That's what makes you a presence even in your absence. And if you've made it this far, it means something in you already knows this. You're not like the others. You don't need to be loud to be heard, or visible to matter. You're not here to impress. You're here to transform. So own that. Now, if this resonated with you, if it stirred something deeper, something that won't let you settle for anything less than inner greatness, then don't walk away silently. Leave your mark. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and become part of a tribe that's not trying to be seen, but trying to see clearly. Because in a world obsessed with appearance, we're here to build essence. And essence, that's eternal.